Good morning, everyone. How are you all doing?
Good.
Good. I thought today we'd do something a bit different. We'll have a little bit of a history lesson. The Titanic. So I thought we'd start off today by going through the learning objectives. So by the end of the session today, hopefully you'll understand the key events that led to the Titanic disaster, explore the causes, and discuss how it's relevant today. So, I thought I'd throw this out to the room. What do we already know? So, if you could just throw out some facts for me, what you know already, feel free to shout out.
It's a ship.
It's a ship. Good start.
It hit an iceberg.
Hit an iceberg.
Was it, at the time it was the largest vessel?
Yes.
Built in Belfast.
Whoa. Belfast. Anyone know the year it happened?
1912.
1912.
Was heading to New York.
To New York. Fabulous.
Billy Zane was on it.
There's no judgment if only you can tell me his film facts. That's absolutely fine. Good stuff, that's a good start. So, that's a good base for the knowledge already, so we'll just talk you through the fast facts basically. So, as you said, Richard, it was the biggest and the most luxurious passenger ship of the time. It was 269 metres long, 28 metres wide, and more than 53 metres tall, which is the same height as Nelson's Column in London. So it had 10 decks, 3 engines, and its furnaces burned through over 600 tonnes of coal. Over 175 men shoveled coal by hand and worked in shifts of 24 hours a day. Although Titanic had 4 funnels, only 3 worked. The 4th one was just for cosmetic purposes only. Some say the 4th funnel was used to store pets for the first class passengers, but we don't know for sure. And the Titanic's full title was actually RMS Titanic because it carried the Royal Mail, so it was technically classed as a Royal Mail ship. So, Titanic, it cost £1.5 million in 1912. Today, that's £170 million. And it took 3 years to build. And as you say, Coral, in Belfast, which is a pride of place in Belfast if ever you go there today. So, wages on board varied greatly. So the Captain Smith, he would get about £11,000 a month. Whereas if you're a stewardess, you'd get about £375 a month in today's value. So, Titanic was built as a passenger ship. On the fateful night, there were 2,200 people on board on its maiden voyage. And the ship was not at full capacity on its maiden voyage, which is important to note, which we'll come to. Titanic was a luxury ship, so tickets were expensive. So a 3rd class ticket then, £7, today £800. This is for the sort of the working classes. So, and it's also important to note, these are expensive ticket prices, but at the time there was a lot of emigration to America. So really for these passengers it was a one-way journey because they were going from either Liverpool or Ireland and then go to New York to set up a new life in New York. So even though it wasn't very expensive, it wasn't likely to be doing a return journey. Ironically, a lot of these people did not make a return journey. And a 1st class ticket as well, so that set you back about £3,300. So the thinking, as I mentioned, happened in April 1912, sailing through the North Atlantic at full speed, and at 20 to midnight struck an iceberg on its starboard side. So, common misconception, it hit the side of the iceberg, but it didn't actually create a hole. What it did was it bent the metal of the hull enough for water to seep in slowly. So, if ever you get the chance to visit the wreck, you won't see a big giant hole. If you just see buckled of where the rivets have come apart from the hull. So, obviously, events like this haven't really happened much before. So there's a lot of confusion, poor preparation. Many of the lifeboats on board were launched half full, and as we might already know, there weren't enough lifeboats in the first place. So by 2:20, the Titanic broke apart, sank into the freezing water, leaving over 1,500 people in the water with little chance of survival. Nearby, the RMS Carpathia arrived 2 hours later, and they managed to rescue just over 700 people. And 700 people out of 2,200 on board is very slim pickings. So just the tip of the iceberg. So I wanted to sort of discuss, everyone believes, well, everyone knows the iceberg did cause the impact, but as I say, it's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what went wrong that night. So, interesting to note, this they think is the original iceberg that sunk the Titanic, because there's a slight red paint mark there. But it might, we don't know for sure, but that's what historians.
Does that still exist?
No, sadly becoming seawater now.
Yeah.
So yeah, as I say, people think it's just the iceberg that created the tragedy, but a long list of things went wrong that night. So it was a moonless night, so there's not a lot of night light for the watchmen to see. And the only way they saw the iceberg last minute was because there was a gap in the sky where the stars were. So that, as you might have seen in the film, it was very well lit. That wasn't the case, it was very dimly lit. It was a fluke in weather, so it was a bit of a warmer winter than normal, so a lot of ice melted from Greenland, hence all the icebergs. And tragically, very tragically, the watchmen that night didn't have their binoculars on them. And the person who left their shift forgot to leave the keys for the binocular case. If they had left the keys, maybe we wouldn't be having this discussion today. So I won't go through this too much, but as we mentioned earlier, there was a lack of lifeboats, lack of training, and also tragically, there was a ship that was very close by to Titanic when she was sinking. However, the captain of the California had gone to bed and turned off all of his wireless operations. So again, if he had his radio on, maybe we'd have a different story today. So I just want to show you the animation of what happened that night. So obviously scrape the side. And as you can see, it's very dark. So there we are. And as you can see, the water's starting to fill up. Now, people said Titanic was unsinkable at the time. Yes, but only if only 4 of these compartments flooded, but sadly 6 flooded, which meant it slowly started to go down. You can see it starting to go down at an angle. Slowly sinking. So as I say, it took over 2 hours for the ship to sink, which is quite slow for a ship sinking, but they had the technology there, it just wasn't quite good enough to keep it afloat. And there we are. You can see how dark it is. So once these lights went out, you're in pitch black. So people often say, how come people didn't know the ship broke in two? Well, chances are you didn't see it because it was pitch black. And if you were in the water, all you'd hear is people sort of screaming for their lives. It's very dark.
That would be testing.
Absolutely, there's the survivors said they could no longer attend sort of sporting events. You know, the Yankee Stadium in New York, people had major PTSD from hearing the screams of those people in the water. So the ship, front half of the bow, travelling about 70 miles an hour before it hit the floor. Here we are. And just because of physics, because there's no bow shape, this end sort of exploded because the air was rushed in to the hull and sort of spiraled all the way down to the sea floor. That takes us to our research task. So, on this table, I'm going to have a lot of resources for you to have a look through. Feel free to stay in your pairs. So, feel free to take anything from the tables back to your groups. I want you, as pairs, to go through the resources, and I'm going to give you a theme for you to think about when you're looking through these historical artifacts, shall we say. So, you're the team port team. So, I want you to find my clicker. I'm only joking. So, yes, port team. So you're going to, sorry, I've changed it. So you're going to look at the humanity of what happened. So I want you to look at the resources here and think about the social impact of what happened that night. So how did the people feel? Any evidence here of what the sort of public reaction was to this tragedy? And then the starboard team, I want you to look at, starboard team. So I want you to look at life in 1912. So have a look through these photographs. I want you to discuss in your pairs the themes there. So your humanity,
Yeah.
life in 1912.
And we pick resources and take them back to our
Absolutely, yeah.
tables, do we?
Take your time, have a peruse, see what you think.
There's a bit of overlap, isn't there?
That's probably the first class.
Okay, if you want to just grab your resources, head back to your team and start discussing your choice themes.
Thanks, sir. I've got
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
see that one.
yeah, got a few bits there.
Yeah.
One of our real service one, which like all accounts for a insurance skip.
Mm.
Nice a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, very famous picture this, yeah. Yeah.
It just, everyone just, like, between, sort of, it's, you kind of feel it,
Yeah,
like,
unknown,
yeah.
because it doesn't say exactly how many people died, because they didn't know.
Yeah.
Realistically, they didn't know who died until the Carpathia came to New York with the survivors. Fantastic.
Yeah. Oh,
Look at it. Off you choose. Life in 1912. What do we think?
I've gone for this as my choice pick
Yeah.
because it both is talking about the class differences
Mm.
and the fact that the sort of upper
So like
classes
it's
were
like,
saved, but lots of the lower classes were lost.
Yeah.
The importance of the unions at that time.
Yes.
So I think that in terms of
Wonderful. Yeah. And you've got a great selection of resources here. So you've got photographs. This is great for studying what actually happened, what life was like. Visually seeing this
the
photograph.
numbers and the clothing
Absolutely.
and the buildings.
We've got sort of examples of artwork from the time as well.
Yeah.
How people got their news as well.
Yeah.
Hardly any advertisement you notice, possibly. Fantastic.
The fact that the Red Sea across the Atlantic at the time was on a big ship.
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
Okay, I'll give you a couple more minutes just to get your thoughts down.
yeah.
class discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
That one's for the scale.
Okay, so humanity, team port, what are we thinking? What sort of impacts did the thinking have on the human story, basically?
Yeah, one of the kind of most striking things that Ruth pointed out here was that it's an invite for everyone from a whole borough to a memorial service.
Wow.
So yeah, being aware that so many people from Battersea area were on that ship, and then just to go, do you know what, we're just going to invite absolutely everybody.
Yeah. At the end of the day, an entire community built the ship, so they're going to mourn together, aren't they? So whether you're, dock workers from Southampton or you shipbuilders in Belfast, you're going to mourn together because realistically you would have lost people you've known in your work.
Yeah, and then Chris picked up these two images
Yeah.
to kind of give it the context of the size and scale of the tragedy, but that one with the young man on it, they don't actually know how many passed, it doesn't give an actual figure, it just says Titanic disaster, great loss of life.
Yeah.
It's expressions.
At the time.
Yeah.
It was sadness, isn't it?
Yeah, so like his face depicts the message on the,
Yeah.
and it's just fear, like.
That's, it's a great study of that photograph as well, a very famous photograph that as well, so good to go into that deeply. Fantastic work, thank you very much. Okay, Starboard TV, life in 1912, what did we notice?
My key thing, from my perspective, is this letter, which is a letter of protest from the unions, talking about how the third classes and crew were forbidden to get in the lifeboats. But they run to
so
the first
class
class
divide,
passengers.
big topic, yeah.
Yeah, and the wantonness of the decision to make the time-saving route despite the awareness that there was ice.
Yeah, so that's sort of disregarding safety measures in a way, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and the unions calling on the Labour Party to force the government
So
to provide protection for all mariners and passengers irrespective of class or grade.
yeah, that's a story we see today, putting profits over people, Look what happens when that happens on a big scale. Lovely stuff. I'm just going to move on, but those are some great answers there. Thank you very much. And it's great, that you've chosen lots of different types of sources. So you've got photographs, newspaper articles, and here you've got some literature as well, some artwork. Fantastic. Rather than using one type of source, it's good to use as many as possible. So Titanic today, I'll just go through this very quickly. So the wreck was discovered in the 80s by Dr. Robert Ballard. He was actually this is a very fascinating story, which you can have on another lesson, but he was charged with a secret mission with the CIA to find the Russian submarine. And they used this as cover to put the Russians off the scent, basically. So they pretended to look for the Titanic, but they found the Russian submarine, and then Dr. Robert Ballard said, well, I found the submarine, can I go and look for the Titanic now? A week later, he found the Titanic. There you go. There we are.
Yeah.
As you can see, it's almost like a plane wreck.
Yeah.
The amount of debris that's everywhere. It's a very dangerous place to visit as well, which we might come to in a few minutes. So there we are. And this is taken from Titanic Belfast, which I highly recommend if you want to go, feel history and see history with your own eyes. So the building here is built to the same dimensions as the ship, so you can see the size comparisons to the buildings here. And here is an outline of where the ship was being built. These tiny little dots of people right at the back there. And here as well, just to give you the scale. So, yes, I highly recommend going to Titanic Belfast if you get the chance. So I just want a couple of minutes just to have a discussion really. So Ruth, why do you think studying stories like this are important today?
Such a big piece of history, but even this morning, things I was unaware of that you've just shared with us, so learning about it.
And Richard, Any themes that have come up, do you think, in our discussion that are still really relevant today?
I think still there's social injustice.
Mhm.
Class divide. I think from
Class
a
divide, yeah.
technology point of view, there's a reliance on technology.
Yeah.
Considered to be infallible ones.
Absolutely. Do we put too much trust in technology? And you know, this story's, you know, next month we're coming up to 113 years ago, and we're still having conversations about class division. It's disheartening in a way to see, you know, we've come a long way technologically, but maybe not so much socially.
Not so much because of that crash last week off Yorkshire Coast.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
All
On the sat nav and everything,
Yeah.
accidents are still happening. So hopefully by the end of today, you've understood how the sinking happened. It wasn't just one iceberg that did it, it was a long list of different small accidents or mishaps that led to this. You've all worked in teams to use different types of sources to gather your research and collaborated in discussing these themes and how they're relevant today. Let's very quickly recommend some further reading. So Ghostly This is a documentary by James Cameron. It was excellent. Rest is History. They did an epic 4-hour podcast on the sinking. If you want to see the black and white images from today, but with a bit of colour, Titanic in colour on Channel 4 is well worth the watch. So there we are. If you want to scan your tickets, find out what happened to your passenger,
Oh, really sad.
and I'll also
Be a hero.
ask if there's anything you want to say in terms of feedback. Then I hope you enjoyed your voyage. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.